Welcome in, everybody, to episode 11 of JD's Empire Sports Talk. I'm your host, of course, JD, back for another episode this week. We usually do in the second episode of the week Knicks and Rangers, but today we'll switch it up a little bit and do St. John's and Rangers. My reason for that is I feel the Knicks are playing good, and I kind of don't want to get repetitive talking about how good Brunson, Cat, and the rest of the starting five is, how much depth they don't have, all that good stuff. If they're, of course, next week, I'm sure I'll probably do St. John's and Knicks, so we'll do double up on basketball, take the Rangers out, and we'll bring them back, and we'll do a rotation of it, especially with the Mets coming in, too. It's another big thing that we're going to start talking about soon. But before that, I just want to talk about what's coming up. So, of course, this episode will be out soon. We'll do the predictions that'll be posted on Instagram and TikTok for the four playoff games this week in the NFL. Then Monday, we'll do a championship preview of Notre Dame and Ohio State, which is going to be a big one, especially for the boys. We're Notre Dame fans, so any little glimpse of championship winning, we love to see that because we have not seen one in our lifetimes. That would be for any of our teams. So especially if they can go the way they started out this year and the way they can finish it would be huge. We'll get into a lot of that good stuff on Monday. We'll do only Jets news next week if they somehow find a way to not interview the entire universe and pick a GM and a head coach coming up. But we'll stay tuned and locked in with that one. And of course, later next week we'll have like I said, probably St. John's and Knicks talk, maybe a little Rangers because I don't want to do all basketball. We'll see what happens, but we'll mix it up and just keep everyone on their toes. Hopefully, I really want to thank everyone for watching. The videos, our reels, Instagram, TikTok will be banned soon, but I'm just going to keep posting until that's the case, until they do get rid of it. I think first today we could start with the Rangers just because how good they're playing in January, 4-1-2. They've played 7 games, have found a way to get points in 6 out of the 7, so they are playing better hockey. Still dead even at 500. They did lose their last game to the Avalanche in Colorado on the road in overtime. It was a very good game. They had the game. They had the game in hand until at the end. They were up 2-1, and they did lose the game. They gave up the lead at the end of regulation, and then in overtime they fought to the end, and they lost with a few seconds left. So that could have been a game they had in the win column as well. But I think it's important to know that they are getting healthy now. With Igor Shesterkin's been back for 3 games. We'll get into a little bit more of what he's been doing since he came back from injury. Chris Kreider is back as well. I know he's someone that hasn't played great this year, so maybe being out for a little bit with the injury was why that's the case. So hopefully he can pick up his game. And Philip Hedl, who had a really good 2-game stretch and then suffered an injury, is also back. So it's good to see they're rounding into healthy form. Maybe that could have been the reason why they haven't been playing great because they all were hurt. Hopefully that was the case. Not hopefully it wasn't that they're just not as good as they were. As Ranger fans, we were hoping and praying that they can pick up their game where they were the last 2 years. Right now, 5 points out of the playoffs, so they have not played good hockey at all the entire season, and they're besides the beginning. So after that, we talked about a few weeks ago, the 12-4-1 stretch. After that, they have not played good hockey, but they're still very much in the playoff race. I mean, all you got to do is make it into that last wild card spot. You never know what can happen. I know it's a little different for the Rangers this year because they usually used to being in that top 3 in the division when they are good, and when they're bad, they usually just don't even have a shot. So it's good to see that. Not good to see, but maybe they're fighting. It's not like they've given up and rolled into a ball and be like, oh, we're done. They're not done. They're gonna try to come back and make a playoff push. And it's not always the worst thing being the team that's the underdog because you have nothing to lose. Listen, we know what the Rangers' expectations were coming in, but if they can go out and make the playoffs despite how bad they've played, and then they win a little bit, or even if they lose in the first, oh, they lose, okay, they were expected to lose against a juggernaut of this year, whoever they were playing in that situation. If not, every game they win in the playoffs would just be a bonus to everyone, despite the expectations in the beginning, but just because of what's happened throughout the entire season. And I do think they have a really favorable chance of doing this. Ton of home games coming up. That's something that they like. I know they haven't been too great at home this year, but they usually are really good behind the crowd who's always there for them. And just because of what they've done in January, I'm sure the crowd will show up for them once they return home from the road trip. they will show up at least in the beginning of the homestand. If they can keep playing good, they will be there the entire time. Ranger fans always show up. It just depends on how loud and into the game they are. And I feel the more obviously success they have, the more the fans will be in it, which is common sense. But sometimes fans just show up regardless of the team stinking or not. But the Ranger fans will be there. Hopefully, the Rangers can keep playing good hockey and they can get back into this playoff mix. There's a bunch of teams too, so like they're 5 points out, like I said, but they're third worst in the East, which shows that there's a lot of teams to jump to get into playoff positioning, but it's really not the furthest thing away from being a reality. They can do it. They just got to stick together. I know like I said, getting healthy. The defense has been better since Igor came back. That could also be just because of how good he is, and like I said before, we'll get into him a little more. But that's something that the defense has not let up as many goals, but that could just be because of Igor being back. Offense just need to keep sustaining good pressure. They got to continue with certain lines that are working. Ones that aren't, maybe mix them up a little bit. It doesn't always have to be a set in stone plan, which is something I know people criticize Coach Laviolette for, is having a certain plan and he's not budging from it. Maybe you got to make a move. Maybe you got to be like, okay, for example, Mika Zibanejad, you can't be a top six player anymore because you're not getting it done. Philip Pedal, Vincent Trocheck are your best two centers this year. They're playing that way. Okay, that's who we're gonna roll with. They're gonna get the most ice time. Zibanejad, if you want to get back to where you were, you got to pick up your game. I mean, sometimes guys just lose their skill and it happens, and it's just part of the game. But also, maybe he needs that wake up call. He needs that fire underneath him, something that he hasn't dealt with. Not having good seasons recently. I mean, he's been really, really good for the Rangers and even before that. So this could be something he's not used to. He doesn't know what to do. So it'd be like, okay, we're going to demote you, take playing time away, and see what happens. I know they held you scratch Chris Kreider one game. He came back, scored a goal the next one. He also was injured, um, that we talked about before. He was injured, so it's a little different. But you never know. You got to just see a spark. Uh, Talking about sparks, Igor Shesterkin being back. He's been back for 3 games, 2-0-1. They, like I said, that Colorado game, they had a rough loss in overtime, and Igor played a great game up until the last 30 seconds in overtime. Even that second goal, you want him to try to close that game out in the final minutes. Unable to. Overtime, he played great up until the end. So this is something that he won the 2 games at home and not at home. The 2 games previously against the Devils and the Golden Knights, 2 good teams this year. So he's showing that he can keep this team in hang with any team as long as they have him in net. And I'm sure with him being fully healthy now, he'll be in there as much as possible. Probably the only exception will be back to backs, just because it's very tough to do as a goalie. But with them trying to make the playoffs and being back in playoff races, they got to find a way to keep plugging away and rely on him in net. He's the highest paid goalie for a reason. You got to rely on him. With that being said, looking for spark plugs and being a spark plug this year, St. John's basketball, man, they are playing terrific. 15-3, 6-1 in the Big East, good for second place in the conference, which is something. The start 6-1 is one thing they haven't done it in a long time. Being in second place is another thing. They haven't been in second place that high in the conference in a very, very long time. They're led by a group of pretty much still transfers. I know the Rick Pitino players are some of them like Wilcher. He's a recruit. He came in last year. He's a sophomore now. He's really the only like recruit that's playing major minutes right now. The other guys are transfers, so Coach Rick really hit the transfer portal, and we know how successful he is as a coach. Every year, I love how they show every time they play. Year one of whatever school he was at to year two, it's always a big jump, and being 15-3, not something they may have expected. I mean, they knew they were going to be a good team and better than last year, but not this good. They're undefeated at home, 12-0 combined with it's MSG and Carnesecca, but both places they just refuse to lose. They find ways to win, even when they're not playing their best, which is something usually. I know the last 2 games they beat Villanova and Georgetown. Both teams are not great. St. John should have beat them just based off rosters and the way teams have been playing. But they didn't play good in either of those games. Couldn't score very much. Their defense held them held the other two teams down, and they came away with the win. That's the difference between this year's team and the previous years. They find ways to win and not find ways to lose. And that has to do with coaching. You see all over sports, teams that find ways to win usually have a good coach and a good entire coaching staff. Teams that find ways to lose usually don't. And that's the difference make a break between playoffs, keeping jobs, of course, being successful throughout the entire season, especially when you get the postseason play. You never know what's going to happen, and it could be you think about it, March Madness. You go in there, even the Big East tournament, because that's a really big game feel. Of course, you go in one night, you're not playing, you're playing against a lesser opponent, so you're maybe not into it as much. You don't play good, but you still got to find a way to win. Maybe you only score 53 points that game and you win somehow. Then the next night you go out and you score 80 and you win. You got to find different ways to win, and that's when you know you're a good team. And St. John's right now is that. They're led by their two returners from last year, R.J. Lewis and Zuby Ejiofor. Both guys who first year in Queens wasn't maybe up to their standard. Zuby Ejiofor didn't get as much playing time as he thought he would, coming from Kansas. So you would assume that he would have been plugged in for a lot of minutes. But they had Joel Soriano, who was the leader and captain center of the attention for the St. John's team last year. Rightfully so, he played great, and just his journey. So Zuby had to wait his turn, come off the bench, play limited minutes. He did his job very well. That was someone that Coach Pitino talked up a lot last year, even when he wasn't in games a lot. He was like, "This is a guy that you got to watch out for." And he was right. That's someone right now who's a force for them, averaging 15 points, 9 rebounds a game, just being an absolute dog on both sides of the court, both ends of the court, just playing great, being an anchor on defense, rebounding, especially on the offensive end, just giving the team second, third, fourth chances. He's just going. It doesn't matter who it is, and even you can see his impact when he's in foul trouble sometimes, and when he's not on the court, what teams do or what they're open up to do, some things they wouldn't do when he was on the court that they're doing when he's off, and you could see how much of an impact he has on the team. And the other guy, R.J. Lewis, last year he had the shin splints he was dealing with. He was out in the beginning of the season, came in, played his first game, and they were almost done with non-conference play. So he missed a lot of the beginning. That's why non-conference is so important, especially when you have new players, because you got to build the chemistry. And he couldn't get into a good groove. He started a few games, came off the bench for most games. It was very tough for him to get into any rhythm. I know they announced that after the season that he couldn't even practice during the week or in between games. He would just play, ice up, do all that recovery stuff, and then have to play the next game. He couldn't do any extra activity, and that was something that Coach Pitino was like, I can't put him out there all the time because I don't know how he doesn't know our plays. I mean, that's something that's great, like to run them like on the court. Like obviously you can study film and like learn the plays, but if you're not doing it, it's very tough to be counted on, and that's something that you know, that he learned from. Just being someone that's watching and being a leader, which is something he's become this year. He got the surgery to clear up those shin splints, and he became a much better player. We always knew he had the talent. I could see that right away when he even in his limited minutes last year, he played very good with those minutes he was given, and especially being injured, he was able to show what he can do. Averaging 17 a game right now. I think he's someone that could be a potential draft pick. Maybe not. I wouldn't go to the draft this year. The year after, he could be someone that in the first round. This year, he'd probably be a late second round pick just because he doesn't have years of production. So I think if he stays, plays well again, he could be in that conversation for to being a first round pick. Another few things, a couple of more things here. Uh, just because of how good they are, I feel it's fun to bring up bad stats because if they were bad, obviously we would know like the stats show that they stink. But shooting 30% from 3 point range is funny. I find it funny because just think they're 15-3, 6-1 in the Big East, and they can't make the 3 pointer to save their lives. Like it's bad. Like it's bad when you see teams they just shy away from the 3 point line. They're daring the team to shoot, and they can't make them. They really only have one or two reliable 3 point shooters, and those are guys that aren't consistent from deep. Wilcher and Smith, Davion Smith and Simeon Wilcher, they're not reliable from deep. They're their best 3 point shooters, but they're not reliable. They're not going to go out there and knock down 10 out of 15 on a night. They're never going to do that. And that's something that I find hilarious that they're shooting 30% from three. And especially in this day and age of basketball, you need to be able to shoot 3-pointers to win games. And they're just showing that it's not the case for them. They don't need to do it. That comes, though, with being great on defense, which they are, and just being awesome inside 2-point field goals, like mid range layups, all those easy shots. They say they're making those, which makes up for it because they're adding. If you're scoring 80 points a game, you got to be scoring somehow, and that's how they're doing it. Because from the free throw line as well, they're only shooting 69%. That's another thing. So they're not doing good from the 3-point range. You're not doing good from the free throw line. It has to be those mid range shots. 69% is good for like 225th in the country. So they're down there in numbers, especially and the 3-point shooting is like 300 towards the way bottom. I'm sure if you looked at both of these stats in depth to see what teams are near them, there'd be a lot of teams that don't have winning records, and they're the one outlier to that. That's why I think they still got more in the tank because I feel combine their percentages, which I think will go up, especially lately. The 3-point percentage has been better from the past few games. I think they're starting to find easier shots to make. Certain guys know their role. Like Kadari Richmond shouldn't be shooting 3-pointers. That's not his specialty. Never will be. He should be setting up other guys to shoot 3-pointers and have success doing that. So I do think they have a lot more in the tank, especially with the depth too. They're playing like the 6 guys with 25 minutes or more, and it's kind of a little bit of a drop off after that. So I think Brady Dunlap, when he comes back from injury, he'll definitely be in that special rotation when it comes time to like postseason play, just because he can shoot. It's something they need, and he has size, which is another thing they can use. Those other guys are younger guys that he's playing are freshmen or two Iona transfers, so those guys can't be counted on to do too much just because of experience and just lack of. The Iona is a lesser D1, so if he's bringing guys from there, they may not have as much talent as, of course, other benches in the Big East. So it's things he tries to shy away from, but he still uses more. He's got to start using more guys. He has used 9 to 10 guys in games, but really only in the first half. Second half, he rolls with those 6, like I said, R.J. Lewis, Zuby Ejiofor, Davion Smith, Simeon Wilcher, Kadari Richmond, and Aaron Scott. Those are the 6 guys that he rolls with, and he ride or dies by them. I feel that could also be a reason why the shooting's low, but you can't complain when you're winning games. That's it. That's the part of anything in sports. If you're winning games, there's no complaints. You got to sit back and enjoy what the team's giving you, and it's been great. They're on a 4-game winning streak. They have Seton Hall and Xavier coming up in the next 2 games. Seton Hall on Saturday. Seton Hall stinks this year, but it's always a problem for St. John's for whatever reason, especially when they play them at their place, either on campus or in the Prudential Center. Always a problem for the Johnnies to beat Seton Hall, and that's something I feel like this year everyone's like, oh, they overcame this, they overcame that. Okay, next obstacle, go out and beat Seton Hall. Something you haven't done on the road consistently in forever. You may get one game here and there from them, but not at a consistent level. That should start now. And Xavier coming up as well. This team they beat already. They should be able to. They beat them by 10 on the road. They should be able to take care of them at home pretty easily. Um, I think if you look at it, 6-1 in the Big East. You play 20 conference games. So after these 2, you're at 9. You got one more until you're halfway through. So after the halfway point, you have UConn and Marquette, who are definitely the best 2 teams in the Big East. You have them 2 times each. So you have 4 of those last 10 games against those type of teams. So you got to win these games that you have in front of you now, and somehow maybe try to split out of those 4 games, try to win 2. You got to try to get out there and win 2. If you win more, that's great. If you win less, it's going to be a little tougher to be in the top 2 just because of how good those teams are doing. I know St. John's is second, UConn's behind them, but UConn is a great team. They won't lose many games. And this year, especially with the Big East not being as great as it usually is, losing to teams that you shouldn't lose to will hurt a lot more when it comes to seeding and March Madness, because we know this team will definitely be in unless they have a collapse, which I don't see happening, but they'll definitely be in the dance. They just want to keep improving their seed, which is the most important thing, because if you can improve seeding, it makes it a little easier. Of course, anybody can be beat. You see it all the time, but it's something to keep an eye on. But I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. What I mentioned in the beginning with all the good things coming up, the predictions this weekend, Notre Dame, Ohio State preview, Jets talk maybe, depending on what they do. Knicks, Rangers, St. John's, Mets coming up in the future. More predictions after that. There's a lot going on. So maybe on Instagram if you like. If you're watching on YouTube as well, just keep getting those viewers up for all of us. TikTok at JD Empire Sports Hook. Just give us a like, comment, share it all around to get our views up, get more people looking at the account. More things will keep coming up in the future. We'll possibly, if Notre Dame can win, have a live video going on Instagram. Maybe we'll see what happens. But with that being said, episode 11 is now done, and JD signing off. Everyone have a good night.